All right, we'll let a few more people come in and then we're going to start. All right, so people are trickling in, but it's 10:01, so we'll get started. Um, Welcome, everyone. My name is Chris Ravia. I am the manager of statewide commuter programs for the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and today's meeting is the Commuter Assistance Program Grant Workshop. Next slide. All right, so this is our short agenda, but we've got a lot to say. So we're going to cover the Commuter Assistance Program, the grant program. It has two funding opportunities, CAP Operating Assistance and CAP Project Assistance. As most of you probably know, these applications are submitted online through DRPT's web grant system. And if you don't have access to that, we can tell you get you set up for that. But we have a lot to cover. There's been some changes to some things and some emphasis areas. So please pay attention to that. If you think you know the Commuter Assistance Grant Program, you probably don't know everything. So we want to make sure we cover everything. There will be time for Q&A at periodic times throughout the workshop. But if you have a question, you can either use the raise your hand feature, and then we'll call on you when there's a pause in the presentation, or put your question in the chat, and we'll get to all the questions we have today as we go. So with that, I will. Oh, and one more thing. Yes, this is being recorded, and the recording of this presentation will be available probably around by December 1st or on December 1st, as there are some holidays next week. So there's not very many business days, but we will have this available to you if you want to refresh it, or if anyone cannot make this meeting in your agency and you want to have them take a look and listen in on some of this stuff. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to Kathy Moline to talk about the Commuter Assistance Program.
Next slide. Good morning, everybody. I am Kathy Moline, for those of you who do not know me, and I am the Commuter Programs Manager for locations outside of Northern Virginia. So with that, we can go to the next, no, keep this slide, thank you. Just a quick overview, we have two funding opportunities, CAP Operating and CAP Program Assistance. Both are an 80-20 match, and this is how you will find the applications listed in Web Grants. The purpose of our grant programs are to make Thank you. The purpose of our grant programs are to make sound investments in programs and projects that are both effective in achieving results, engaging the public, and encouraging an increase in the use of transit, vanpool, and carpool. Those are the results we're looking for, and you will hear this throughout the presentation. Next slide. These are a list of some of the changes we've made for FY27. And we'll talk to you about each of these as we go through all of the slides. Thank you. Next slide. New this year is conferences and training expenses that are only allowed for CAP operating. They are not eligible for any of the CAP project assistance programs. We don't have limited funding for CAP operating or any of our CAP programs. So we're looking for you to use merit and special program funding opportunities for conferences and training. Conferences should be limited to one full-time person and attendance limited to maximum of 2 project staff whose duties are 50% of their annual job duties for the program. Next slide. This is an area where we've had applications struggle each year. We need very detailed work duties and work performed for each staff person that is charging to the grant. Please be very specific and avoid general terms such as oversight and supervise. Any tasks that are not listed in the contract will not be allowed to be charged to the grant. So always remember that just because it's in the application doesn't mean that it's in the contract. And DRPT does reserve the right to remove any ineligible tasks that do not increase the use of transit, carpool, and vanpool. Next slide. Grant administration tasks, which are necessary for the overall management and execution of the program, should be limited to direct costs such as preparing and submitting claims, reviewing and signing grant contracts, processing and paying invoices for vendors or contractors, setting up a budget in your financial system that you can use for tracking online budget expenses versus a grant contract budget. Your grant administration cost should be a small percentage of your total budget expenses and much less than that of the cost to implement activities. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. Go back one. We should be on challenges and contests. There we go. Thank you. New this year, if you would like to do any challenges or conferences that you listed in your project scope and in your marketing and promotions section of your application, you can now add extra funding to your budget. Everyone is eligible for this, but you must use the Connecting VA app, and costs should be listed in your budget details. There are 3 types of events. There's the basic, results, and races. The prices may vary, so please reach out to Chris and I or Gabe if you'd like more information. Next slide. Justification of memberships is another struggle for applications last year. You have to justify who uses the membership and how does it get results. And remember, the results are an increase in carpool, vanpool, and transit. Who else in the agency uses it? If you're using software and systems, what is used and how? Include examples as well. If more than one division uses the expense charged to the grant, remember it is just, you will need to prorate that. And a good example would be if you use Canva and it's $1,000 a year and there's other grant or other departments that are in your agency that use it as well, you should only be charging $250 a year to the CAP grant. And now I'm going to pause for any questions on application updates. Chris, can you?
Yeah, Josh got a question. Josh, if you could take yourself off mute.
Yep, cool. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Catherine. On the contest slide, and it says that we must use Connecting VA. I also interpret that to mean do not use any type of challenges or conquests related to Go My Way VA, nor the Go DMV competition in the Northern Virginia area. Is that correct?
Yes. So
Okay.
the Connecting VA, and Chris, you can jump in as well. But the Connecting VA is an app that we use and it has good results. It's approved and that's one of the ones that we get very good results from for contests and challenges.
Yeah, Josh, just to add to that. So what we're looking at here in your application, if you're doing a specific contest or challenge just for the city of Alexandria, then yeah, we definitely want you to use the Connecting VA app, and we can work with you on that. So you mentioned Go My Way VA. They're going to do more like regional Northern Virginia contests, which you can participate, but we're just talking like a specific one just for your program. Let's use the Connecting VA app for that.
Okay, that makes sense in the sense of the programming, but I'm also thinking of with the Go My Way VA, we should be using CAP funding to do any of the marketing or promotions and not use staff time through the CAP grant to do that with if it relates to other apps. That's correct, right?
Yeah, so you brought up a question we knew we were going to get with regarding Go My Way VA. So thanks. Thanks for
Yep.
that. So and it's not an easy answer because this is Go My Way VA is new. We're still working
Yep.
through how we evaluate at the local level, Go My Way VA's impact. So it's a little tricky because we don't have all that nailed down just yet. I think going back to what Kathy was saying, the results are to get more people into carpools, van pools, and of course transit. And we have mechanisms to measure that when you're using the tool for like Commuter Connections ride matching system, when you use the Connecting VA app. We have tools in those apps that we can rely on that say, for the results that we want. So we're still working on that with Go My Way VA because it's a little different app. And a lot of what Go My Way VA does is more of a sort of what Google Maps does. It's more of a trip planner to go from point A to point B, routing. And so that's not necessarily people looking for a commute option other than driving. So that's the trick. We've got to make sure that we're doing that. If we can get there, then yeah, it doesn't matter what tool you use, right? So you're promoting transit, you're trying to do behavior change marketing to say, hey, join a carpool, you'll save money and all the benefits. And then you can use one of these tools to find a carpool partner or to get rewarded for using carpools. Ultimately, that's where we want to get. So yeah, I think there's a place for Go My Way VA. It's just and hopefully by July we will have that nailed down as far as measuring it, that your program when you're doing that gets those results.
Okay. I think I understand. Okay, I understand Go My Way VA because that makes it a lot clearer. I know where we're headed with that. And then with the when it isn't a City of Alexandria contest or challenge, but it's the regional things like the Go DMV for the region, um, the Go DMV challenge. Should we put marketing dollars in the application to help engage people to be part of that Go DMV challenge? And the same is with Bike to Work Day to tell people like, hey, Bike
Yeah,
to Work Day's here, sign up, things like that. Because those are regional
right,
challenges.
right. Yeah, that's another good question. Yeah. So I think everyone has to look at their program and what they feel is going to be beneficial to getting more people to either bike commute or to take transit or carpool vanpool. So it's not like I could say, yes, everyone should do this. I think it's going to be up to you guys individually with your program to say what's going to get me better results. And yeah, you're going to get a lot of, from COG, from VDOT about, hey, we want you to help promote this. And so that, we don't want to not do that. But I think as far as how much money and time and effort you spend, you're really going to have to sort that out yourself. And we can talk to you. Gabe is always available to talk to kind of work through that. So I don't think it's like a one size fits all. And then keep in mind for Go My Way VA, if you are a Northern Virginia agency that gets funding, CMAQ funding from VDOT for employer outreach, there's another funding opportunity there to promote Go My Way VA. So don't just always lean on DRPD funding. There's some other funding available too. So yeah, this stuff is new, so we're kind of working through it together to see what makes sense.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks, Josh. Any other questions? Okay, very good. Next slide, please.
Oh, hang on. There's a question in the chat. Well,
Okay.
it's meant for Gabe from Jessica. Does that mean we wouldn't be able to get any reimbursement for our Trek and Treat challenge? So I think we need to talk about. I'm I know we kind of did some things early on as we were trying to figure out how we can use Connecting VA for some of these more local challenges. And so we did something up in Fairfax County and it worked. So I think we need to talk about that. So the concept of here of why we want you to use only DRPT approved apps or systems for challenges and things. There's a lot of reasons for that. One is, we've made an investment in these other things, and so we want to use that investment. We don't, having an investment in another system, like why would the Commonwealth invest in like everything? So we've made a lot of investments. The other thing is there are some conditions of data security that we've got to make sure is attained. So any different system that you want to use, we've got to ensure that that meets our IT requirements for securing that data. And so that's the other component of this. So we know Commuter Connections is fine. We know Go My Way VA is fine. We know Connecting VA is fine. But some other things we don't know because we've never vetted them. So that's why we want to make sure that you're only using, one of the DRPT or the Commonwealth approved systems and apps so that we keep that data integrity. But also, we've made investments in these things. We want to use those investments to the max. Hopefully that answers your question, Jess.
Yeah, Jessica, we're good for the current fiscal year, and we definitely can have conversations moving forward.
Yeah.
So just to set you at ease there, but yeah.
Yeah. It kind of depends on what you're doing. So, all right, one more question from Christy. Yeah, you can take yourself off mute.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Christy at Ride Solutions in the New River Valley. And I thought I understood, but the more y'all talk more, I'm like, wait, I'm not sure with what we do, particularly our Bike to Work week. We do promotion, but we use the app. We drive people to the app, but we don't do a lot of promotion with the Agile Mile app. Do we still need to budget for the fact that we're going to promote the app and go get reporting from it, or is this about using it for the messaging? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, Christy. So if you want to boost what you're doing now for your bike month, we can definitely talk at our next meeting. But if you want to boost it so that it's being, I know you're tracking it now, but you might get an extra kick out of doing the messages or whatever. If you want to do that, you can just add the extra budget into your grant.
Okay, so it really is more on the messaging side, not for the reporting kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That answered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions before we move on?
Seeing anyone's hands raised or chat, so I think we could probably move on. But again, if you come up with a question about something we've already talked about, that's fine. Go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your hand. We'll get to them.
And I do want to mention the stuff I talked about before, the CAP operating assistance is used both in CAP operating as well as the CAP projects. So we kind of covered both of that, but Gabe will probably touch on some of them again as well, just to refresh. So again, I just want to remind you of the goal for CAP operating. It is to achieve a measurable increase of DRPT approved ride matching services, which will lead to an increase in the use of transit, carpools, van pools, and or bicycle commuting. Next slide. This is a map of the current eligible applicants for both CAP operating and CAP projects. And if you are new on the call today, and are seeking to apply for a CAP grant, please reach out to Chris, Gabe, or I, and then we can help you talk more about the application, and please do this prior to filling out the application. Next slide. This is another area where we had a little tricky, I'm going to say, last year. So for the title, we want you to, in your application, we want you to enter the name of the program as it's promoted to the public. So with this example, I'm going to use Mid-Penn Rideshare. And so below, we want you to enter the description that is right here, the formatted already for you, and it'll read Mid-Penn Rideshare, which promotes transit, carpool, vanpool, and bicycle commuting to the public and provides free ride matching and trip planning service through the Connecting VA app in the Middle Peninsula region. It's already done for you, and it's already an automatic 5 points towards your scoring. Next slide. Any tasks and activities listed in your project scope must be included in your CAP from your CAP strategic plan. So a lot of you did CAP strategic plans last year, so you want to reference those when you're working on your scope of work. So please include all work and activities that will be performed. Do not create a separate Word document as an attachment for your project scope. We have to go by what is in your application. So it has to be, we can't go by an attachment such as a Word doc for your project scope. And this goes for CAP projects as well. Next slide. So these are required tasks that you will need to do for FY27, and you should have been doing previously, I guess. But we want you to provide direct assistance to the public. We want you to follow up with the public and reporting of the DRPT required performance data, any project activities and results. We want you to detail in your staff work tasks, how are you going to follow up? Don't just say we'll follow up in a week. We want you to tell us how you're going to follow up. So quite often, the more information that you do, the better we can do that. Next slide, please. So this is the scoring for FY27, and it has changed from last year. And I'm only going to touch on the highest scoring categories because that's where we tend to have some confusion some years. So budget details, I'm going to talk about cost effectiveness and ride match request trends. Budget details was another area where we needed more information, especially with promotional items and supplies and materials. So we want to know what are you going to purchase? For supplies and materials, make sure that you do check your indirect costs, as some applications in previous years included copier paper, staples, tape. That should already be in your indirect costs. This is for anything you're purchasing for the project. Some of you purchase special paper, but do write that in there and what you're going to use it for. Cost effectiveness, is the project cost efficient in achieving the maximum results with the minimum costs? And ride share trends, what results will be achieved? And we will be looking at your past 3 years for your ride match requests, excuse me. And one thing we are asking, please don't pad your budget as it leaves less for others. As we have a strict budget amount that is shared with other programs, it has not gone up in the years that I've been here. So I do know that deobligating is we have to do at the end, but just maybe look at your grant applications from the past few years, see what has been deobligated in the past, so that when you're working on your, excuse me, FY27 budget, you can see, oh, we didn't spend that much in salaries, excuse me, fringe and indirect, as we thought we would. So maybe you can, adjust that as you go. Questions?
Well, Kathy, why don't you go to the next one,
The
because I
next
think you
one,
got one more
and
slide,
then
and then
yeah,
we'll pause.
perfect. Next slide, please. This is a sample of ride match request trends. This is 25% of your overall score and 25 points. So this score will impact your grant. So the chart on the left is what we want to see in order to achieve a high score. You can see the ride match inquiries have increased for this grant recipient for the last 3 years. The slide on the right, we don't want to see, and it could result in a very, very low score. So do keep that in mind, that this is what we will be scoring on, and it's 25% of your overall. Next slide. Okay, we do have some questions, so Chris, if you can guide us through
Go
them.
ahead, Josh.
Thanks, Chris. I always have questions, right?
That's
We
good.
like the questions.
Something that we've struggled with the last 2 years of applications is writing within the character limit.
Right.
And how do we solve for that? And when we're doing the application, because really what ended up last year is I had to find out what the character limit was for each field, and then go into an Excel document, make a formula to tell me when I pass that character limit, keep revising, and then come back to the application and fill it in. And that took a lot of time and effort. And then sometimes I have a vague memory of one of the questions asked something that needed very detailed work, but had a very 100 character limit response. And we couldn't do anything but say, look at the attachment, because in the attachment, that's when we could actually explain what it is that we were doing. But hearing we're not supposed to put any attachments because those won't be reviewed, I don't know how to solve for that. So that's my 2-part question. Help.
So we do review the attachments, but we want you to understand, if you do include a scope of work as a Word document, we will not be scoring on that Word doc. We will be scoring what is in your application. Chris, did we up the number of characters for a scope of work?
Yeah, so we looked at what people put in the applications last year, and as the three of us discussed, where we needed to increase the character size. So some of these, I think the scope is included. Some of these sections got increased in the character size. So hopefully your issue that you are seeing happens. Hopefully it doesn't happen at all. But if it does, let us know. And actually, we can. The good thing about the web grants thing is we can on the fly increase the character limit so that you can. So definitely let us know if you run into a character limit. And web grants should show you a countdown of say it's, I don't know, 2,000 characters. It should show as you're typing that character number going down. So hopefully that works. But certainly, reach out to Gabe or Kathy or me if you're like, hey, I'm putting something in and putting a lot of details, and I ran into the character limit. We can see about increasing that so you can do that, because attachments I don't think attachments are fun on your end either. So the idea is to have everything in the application, and so we're hoping we're getting better at giving you enough space to do that. All right. Kendall, I see your hand.
Yeah, clarifying question on the data trends for ride matching requests and for new and existing. Do you want us to put together the trending graph, and if so, how far back on data do you want that put together for?
Yeah, no, you don't need to do a graph because we have all that information when you share it in SharePoint. And Kendall, you're in Northern Virginia, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so your trends and you're Northern Shenandoah,
Loudoun County.
Loudoun County. Okay. So Gabe would be looking at your trends in commuter connections.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all in
So-
SharePoint. I just wanted to check if you needed us to provide a supplement.
No,
for that.
no,
Okay. Thank you.
no, but thank you. That's a good question.
Okay, we got a question from Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Yeah, it's like, hey guys, with the trend stuff, like what's the math behind that? I know it's 25%, but like, if I go from one match to two match, that's 50%, right? But maybe it's not so much an actual impact. So like, how are you kind of putting your thumb on the scale with that stuff?
So the trends are mostly for cap operating, but we do the trend marking or the calculating on employer stuff as well. But I'm not in tune with employer, but we pretty much are doing rideshare inquiries through Connecting VA and Commuter Connections. So I don't know that it would necessarily impact your program, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, we have cap operating as well. But the question is just generally like, how do you guys do that math, right? Some people, if
Yeah.
you're going from 1 to 2, that's 50%, it looks good, but it's not actually all that much in actual
Right.
impact, right? But if you're
Yeah.
going from maybe 1,000 to 1,500, right? Like how are you guys kind of big programs to small programs? What's the
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah. So we're only going to compare you against you. So we're
Yeah.
not going to compare you to other programs. So, because
Right.
like you said, there's small programs, there's big programs. So, yeah. And we don't have a formula that says, hey, if you go up by this number or this percent, you get this score. So it is a little bit of us kind of looking at the trends and what's going on this to kind of figure it out. I think in general terms, obviously, if you're trending, big increases each year, then you're going to get closer to that 25. But I think the point that we wanted to make is that we are looking at the results in the score. And yeah, this is kind of a work in progress. I think next year we'll have a little bit more down. But yeah, we don't really have that formula to say, because like you said, if you just go up by one and if it's, or a small number, but then that is a high percentage, I mean, that's a good thing. So we don't want to, knock you down for that. So that's, I think what we really want to see is things trending up and you'll get, a higher score than, certainly the ones that are going down are not going to get half of 25 points.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Ben. Terry, you have your hand up.
Yes, on this. Oh, sorry, something's going on with my thing.
Echo.
Okay, I'll just put this in the chat.
We have an echo going, Terry.
Okay, thank you.
All right. While
Josh,
Terry's, yeah.
yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
That's good. While Terry's typing, Josh, why don't you
Okay, I was typing something out, but it's easier maybe to just say. Put on your capsis hat for a moment because we need the strategic plan updates if there's a minor update every year. And I'm unsure, where do we budget for making updates to the strategic plan? Do I need to make another technical assistance grant purpose for that, which I don't think is really plausible or not feasible or efficient, that's the word. Or do I include in my cap application that we are going to be looking at the cap and make the strategic plan updates and whatever type of cost that we should include? Because this is a new budget line item for the city of Alexandria. If we include it in the cap, I want to make sure that isn't something that gets kicked out.
do you want? Okay, I'll take that. So you're kind of jumping ahead, but yeah, so the cap operating, we want to really stick to, and that's why we had some restrictions on conferences and things, because we really want to stick to using those funds to really get more people to use transit, more people to carpool, more people to vanpool, more people to use bike to commute to the office. So we really stick with that. So if we get into planning or updates of plans, that kind of waters down that funding. So we really want you to use a technical assistance for that type of thing. Now, I hear what you're saying. If it's a small amount, is it worth a separate grant? So let's talk about that to see what that number comes out to. But we really want to kind of reserve the cap operating for your operations of getting those results.
Okay, then just as a comment, just so you guys can take it, and I hear what we're saying with the cap, keep it to operating. It's all about operating and producing results. I love that. Where I don't know how to handle yet is if every year over the 5-year period, we're supposed to be doing minor adjustments, and then we have to go to our governing body to get them to approve those minor strategic plan things, adjustments, and then after the governing body approves it, we take that strategic plan and put it into our next years of cap application. Like, that is a bit of work, just on staff time and review time. It is planning work, and my municipality, the city of Alexandria, doesn't entertain grants that are less than $100,000 because it isn't actually worth our time and attention. And I don't think that minor change to our strategic plan will be more than $100,000. So I'm just caught in this space of saying, how does the city of Alexandria meet the requirement to update the strategic plan every year, but then not pay for it? And when it's also a requirement for cap. And that's, I just want to put it there. I could talk to Gabe later about it, but yes, we need help on that. Thanks.
Yeah, Josh, we can definitely sort that out. And for anybody else that's having kind of the same question on that, we can work that out. I don't want to interpret too much the guidance or anything, but I would also anticipate any changes in the strategic plan, like you said, should be minor and shouldn't be. I think once you start seeing it's going to be impact salaries, I don't know if that qualifies as minor anymore. So, hopefully the goal is to get these plans for, I think that horizon we have is a 5-year window there, so that they're really good right out of the gate and don't need, changes that are gonna actually impact salary and impact current grants. And so, yeah, I got a feeling this is going to be a different kind of case for every different strategic plan. So I don't want to throw out some blanket statement. But if you are wondering about that, anybody else, and Josh, certainly we can iron that out, because I'd love to also get a sense of kind of the changes you're anticipating that would impact salaries or really add that much of a load to someone's work. So we can definitely work that out and figure out a plan moving forward.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, so a lot of agencies, when it comes to plans, any type of planning, even for transit, even and what have you, that are required or just good things to have, a lot of agencies get some planning funding, just to do that, either from DRPT or VDOT. So I would certainly encourage checking into using those funds to do these updates and plans as they come about. But yeah, definitely talk to us more about what you're anticipating, because I think, yeah, so we can work with you on that. All right. I answered Terry's question in the chat. Marcus has a question. Following up on Ben's scoring question, is the 25-point system focus on the plan for promoting ride sharing, biking, and van pools, or the metrics produced from registrations? Curious due to the success of these modes being customer interest based. Okay, so so for those, again, we're just talking about cap operating right now. So Gabe will be talking about cap project assistance funding opportunity in a minute here. So for this one, we have a very concise performance measure that everyone reports in SharePoint on a monthly basis, which is the number of ride match inquiries or applications. So We know from experience and surveying and other data sources that for you folks in Northern Virginia going through using the Commuter Connections ride matching system, that when folks request a ride matching there is a certain percentage of people that switch from SOVs to some other mode, but also increase the use of the transit, carpooling, and van pooling. So we have survey data that verifies that. So that's why that is the single most important performance measure for the CAP operating grant recipients. And so that's what we're looking at when you saw that chart of those were just samples of applications. It would be what you would call, applications for ride matching in Commuter Connections. And you report that each month. COG does a report, I think, quarterly. Gabe verifies that you're supposed to actually print out the report from the Commuter Connection system and put that into the SharePoint folder also, so that we can verify that that's the right number. So that's where we're getting that information or that data from. Hopefully that, Marcus, that answered your question. All right, I don't see anything else, but again, keep them coming. We'll get to them. We'll take some breaks in between coming up to catch any other questions or that you might have. So Kathy, Gabe, I think we can proceed with the workshop.
Okay. Sounds good. Next slide. So earlier I mentioned merit. And merit, we'd like you to use for training and conferences. Merit stands for Making Efficient and Responsible Investments in Transit. You will be quizzed at the end. I'm just kidding. But anyway, merit funding has workforce development, Rural Transit Assistance Program, also known as RTAP. We have workforce development for small urban training and also technical assistance. So if you like to explore funding options for training and conferences, this is a good opportunity. I had I had a few of my grant recipients use RTAP this year for some conferences. Next slide. Workforce development is a great opportunity to increase your skills and grow your knowledge. It applies to careers in public transportation and our commuter assistant programs. The grant is an 80-20 match, just like CAP operating, but you could also be used for training such as Cutter, which is the Center for Urban Transportation Research. In the past, they had the Commuter Choice Certificate Program. They have now changed it to Professional Learning Series, and they also have a social marketing course, which is quite good. You could use it for the Association for Commuter Transportation. They have a now TDM-CP certification, and you could apply for that through workforce development. Again, the matches are 80-20. One thing to think about, if your agency is sending staff to the VTA conference, the Virginia Transit Association conference, you could put your name in their, I'm going to call it hat as well, that you're attending the conference. So you wouldn't need to do separate funding in CAP operating. If there's a training that isn't mentioned or haven't mentioned, please reach out to Chris Gaber or ICE and we can discuss if it would qualify. The next slide, please. So again, RTAP, Rural Transit Assistant Program. This program assists agencies in rural areas for further development of staff skills and encourages the development of professional networks by attending transit trainings, seminars, workshops, and conferences. And like I mentioned, a few of my my grant recipients did use RTAP to attend the Association for Commuter Transportation Conference in New Orleans this year. It is open all year, so there isn't a cutoff date. So, you will find it in the web grants under funding opportunities, and it'll have RTAP rolling. So that means that it's open year round. RTAP is 100% reimbursable. So, you pay up front and then we do reimburse it if it's approved. Workforce development for small urban training. This is eligible to organizations to use for courses, workshops, seminars, and conferences applicable to transit, public transportation, paratransit, human services, and TDM as well. So that one is an 80-20% match, just like our cap operating. Next slide, please. A lot of you have used technical assistance for funding studies, research, your CAP strategic plan. The goal for here is to improve, justify, and evaluate public transportation or commuter assistance services. This is a 50-50 match. And next slide. And any questions on merit special projects?
I think we're good.
All right, next I will turn it over to Gabe. Go ahead, Gabe.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm Gabe Ortiz, the Northern Virginia Commuter Programs Manager, and I'm going to take the second half of this presentation. I'm going to primarily talk about CAP projects. That's the other funding opportunity that Kathy had mentioned, and there are 4 kind of sub-funding opportunities under that, or at least it's broken up into 4 different categories, and I'll go into each one and talk about those. Then I'll touch on some guidance that'll apply to both CAP project assistance and CAP operating, and then some resources for you guys, and then we'll all be done. And so next slide, Miriam. So real similar to the CAP operating grant, here's the purpose for the CAP project grants. Again, I had mentioned there's 4 kind of opportunities you can apply for underneath this funding opportunity. So while the goal might be the same, you'll have kind of 4 different avenues you can take to reach that goal. So that's kind of the real differentiator between CAP projects and CAP operating. Next slide. Here's a quick breakdown of who can apply. You'll see some similarities here with CAP operating, except with the last 2 bullets. This is very specific to CAP projects. We welcome all public transit agencies to CAP project assistance, and in addition to that, van pool providers. And I'll kind of go into a little bit down the road here where they kind of fit in, but I just wanted to point those out. You can see those kind of bolded out, and that's what kind of stands out as the difference between the 2 grants and rural funding opportunities. Next slide. And here they are. Here are the 4 categories: employer trip reduction, van pool, transit marketing. As you can see, innovative TDM, that might look new to you. I'll get into that. These are all like very specific buckets of funding. I know that sometimes there might be kind of confusion, like what funding works best for the project you're kind of thinking of, especially when it comes to like the innovative TDM. So we'll try to sort that out as we go through. Again, the first 3 that you see are pretty specific. That last one, bit of a wild card. You can put a lot of different things in there. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. Next slide. When you go into web grants and you choose CAP project assistance, you'll see there's a drop down. Make sure you pick the right one. I kind of mentioned before, there can be kind of gray areas of where you should go with what. So absolutely get in touch with one of us. We'll have our contact info at the end. Obviously, we've worked together with a lot of you. But if there is something new you're coming in for, you're not sure exactly what bucket it falls into, let's definitely discuss before if you have any doubts. Next slide. Thank you. All right. So the first one, employer trip reduction projects. This is basically for any project that's going to have some substantial direct outreach to employers. So that's kind of a good way to remember what this grant is for. And I'll highlight that, especially for our NOVA folks, this is private sector employers only. This is going to be kind of what your focus for your application should be, especially for employer trip reduction. These are all kind of non-negotiable. Your application needs to address all 4 of these objectives. This is essentially the purpose for the grant. The first 3 bullets are pretty much the measuring stick that we use when we're looking at the grant. So, we'll essentially look at that and see the application, see how it matches up, and see if it makes sure that the application itself is kind of meeting those first 3 objectives. That last one, very specific to any NOVA programs that are getting VDOT funding. So make sure that in your application, any funding that you are getting through VDOT for employer outreach is reflected in the application. We'll give you an opportunity to kind of tell us how much you're receiving, give us a breakdown of what you're doing with that application or with that funding. And that's required if you're applying for this grant and also get VDOT funding. So here are some basically tips for an application, some tips for kind of achieving those objectives. The one thing I'll ask you all to come away with from this slide is that this is a sales focused grant. So what does that mean? I mean, that can come in many forms, but typically like what we see and what we kind of have noticed works best is really direct outreach. So that's picking up the phone, calling your employer contacts, sending direct emails to employer contacts. Broadcast emails are great too, but that direct email of addressing that HR person, that CEO, that whoever it is would be your main contact at an employer. That's what we're looking for. On-site outreach wherever possible. Sometimes there are business parks that have multiple employees, and that's a great place to do on-site outreach. Sometimes there's an employer can be based in a real large facility. And so being able to do on-site outreach and talk to employers as they come in and out, we've always found that can go a long way. And of course, following up, like I mentioned, this is kind of a sales focused grant. So nobody ever gets that message the first time. They usually don't. So follow-up is super critical. So make sure that's always kind of baked into what you do. Really, the end goal is to get employers to add transit benefits. I'll credit Fairfax for kind of making me see the other side of that. There could be employers who have transit benefits. They're just not being used. They're just sitting dormant. So that's kind of, a secondary feature of this where you can work with those employers to help them do that internal marketing, to help them kind of revive employer transit benefits that they have. Because at the end of the day, if an employer starts a transit benefit, there's no guarantee their employees are going to use it. You got to kind of help them bridge that gap to the next step. So keep that in mind as you do your application. But again, the main focus should be starting transit benefits. One application we did see kind of had a big focus on newsletters. And, something like that, I don't want to discount, but that's more supplemental. And that's not kind of the more reactive or outgoing kind of outreach we want to see. So keep that in mind as you kind of form your applications. Next slide. Vanpool projects. Next slide, Miriam. This is basically here a listing of what we expect with this second out of the 4 projects I'll be talking about under project assistance. The key points of emphasis on here are really the create new vans, add riders to existing vans, help vans that have lost riders. The one caveat and like kind of way that this is different from, let's say, employer outreach and the objectives I have here is with employer outreach, all those objectives pretty much apply. But depending on what route you go here, you might start a program that increases vanpool ridership, but not necessarily focuses on, in this case, let's say NTD, or doesn't focus on pay for performance. So it'll depend on which, but certainly one of these objectives has to be met, if not more than one. So keep that in mind, depending on what route you go with these projects. Next slide. So here's what you basically will get reimbursed for. These are everything that we feel like that should make up your program, depending again on which route you go, whether it's starting new vans or doing pay for performance, one thing to keep in mind, if you do go the route of van save, we do have formal kind of official guidance for that. It's kind of your typical structure that we're all used to. If anybody is not used to that, for sure, you can, I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but it's kind of a paying down of a writer's expense on a grant. I'm sorry, an van pool. And we can for sure provide that if you need it. But just keep that in mind if you do go for the van save. We kind of set the table for you. So in a way, it makes it kind of easier. But yeah, if you are going to pursue a van pool project that has that element of helping a van recoup riders, we would ask that you do use our formal van save guidance. Things that are not eligible, really the operation of the van. So you can't apply for the purchase of a van or can't change tires on a van or anything. This is all about, like I had mentioned before, creating new vans, getting riders into vans, helping existing vans lose that are losing riders. That has to be the main focus of the grant. Operations will not be. And I'll touch briefly on NTD and pay for performance. We don't see a lot of those come through, but I just wanted to mention them. NTD, the National Transit Database. So a van pool project can qualify for this if they collect data and then turn around and report that data to the National Transit Database, and then use the funds you get from FTA or even the matching funds from another source to help keep the van pools running. So that's definitely eligible. I would suggest anybody interested in that, maybe take a peek at what Van Pool Alliance does. Go on their website. They're the foremost program in our state that does this. They've been doing it for a while. They do a great job. Kind of the standard, I think, for that kind of project. And then we have pay for performance projects that are also eligible. Basically, this is like a results-driven approach. So the funding will be tied to outcomes. So an example will be, DRPT might agree to pay a certain amount each month for every new van pool that this project starts. But the results have to be there. That new van pool will determine whether, the payments are made. So that's how pay for performance works. And again, I touched on the operating costs. So if you have any questions about any of that, for sure, reach out. Next slide. All right, so we're going to go into 3 of 4 here. This is our next kind of subcategory. It's transit marketing projects. So we have grants for anyone, any program, and this is where the transit service providers come in. Any transit service provider that's wants to market, whether it's a single route, wants to market multiple routes, bus routes, and even an entire system. We will provide, again, that 80-20 split for any marketing objectives and marketing activities to do that. So really here is kind of the breakdown, but the main takeaway from this is that increase in ridership. That is really the end game for this grant. Any of those activities you take on, they can be however you think you fits well for your project, whether it's social media marketing, whether it's radio ads, those are all game. But the end result does have to be how does that impact ridership, and that's what we'll be looking at for these grants, and it has to be very clear in any application you do for transit marketing. It should show us or it should tell us how you're going to increase ridership. One thing we also want to be mindful of you should be mindful of when you do this grant is the marketing has to be captured in a way that can easily translate to help us show that ridership has been increased or how ridership has been affected. So I'll give an example. If you're doing campaigns throughout the year, and let's say they're not back to back, let's say one campaign is just the first quarter, what we'll want to see is the impact on that campaign in that specific time frame. So we'll kind of work with you and see how we can do that, but that should be clear that when you do marketing, that it has to be as close as we can tied to the ridership and the increase that hopefully we get from that marketing. And this is just a great opportunity also. I've seen really cool partnerships between CAPS and transit service provider. I'll call out Alexandria and the work you guys did with Dash. I think that was a great partnership, and a few other. Loudoun's doing this. Fairfax as well has a really unique, really good transit marketing grant. And I think this is just a good opportunity to help kind of foster that relationship between transit service providers and our CAPs. Next slide. Quick rundown of basically what you'll get reimbursed for if you do transit marketing grant. I think the big thing I'll point out here is that we will not reimburse anything, again, related, similar to Vanpool, related to operations. So anything that's, we're not going to change tires on buses or anything like that. This has to be strictly about marketing. We will pay for staff and consultant work, even staff. We have reimbursed time for the transit service provider staff that have done really good work on these grants. Of course, all the marketing will be paid for, all the advertising placements. That's definitely game for this, as well as incentives or rewards. And I'll touch back to what we mentioned before, that if you go down that route, we would prefer you use the Connecting VA app for that. So I just want to make sure that's clear. But again, no fare buy downs, nothing related to the operations of transit would be eligible for this grant. All right, next slide. And so this is the final of the 4 kind of sub grants under project assistance. And as you can notice, we have a new name, Innovative TDM. And we did that after kind of thinking, well, first, other wasn't very attractive, and we thought it was time for a change. But, part of the reason why we also did this is because we do want to kind of foster, innovative ideas for TDM. There are a lot out there. There's a lot that can be done. So in that effort, we wanted to change this name and also kind of push any idea that really can't be neatly put into these other 3 buckets. This is where we want those projects to go. So I don't want to use the word pilot, but I mean, this is certainly a place to put any new projects or ideas, not ideas. We want fully flex projects. So this is the spot for them when you really can't find a home for them in other grants that we have. Next slide. So the big point of emphasis here is any project that you do propose here, it has to be fully justified. And the other projects are kind of have, again, like I'd mentioned, the table's kind of set for those. We kind of know what we want for that. This is a bit of a wild card. So the one thing we say is if a project is proposed, and if you do go this route of the innovative TDM project, we want to make sure that it's fully justified. So ways to do that is really state a problem. What is the problem? State the solution. That'll be kind of the activities that this project will take on. And then also make sure that whatever route you go, it's going to be measurable, whatever you're going to do. So at the end of the day, we want to know, this was a good investment for the state. This was a good investment for your board or your council. So make sure anything that comes through this grant has those elements. And that's why I kind of backtrack, because we don't want ideas. We want really fully fleshed out projects here. So make sure that's the case. But this is your space to do something innovative, something different. And whatever it is also that you do, going back to the justification, we do want to see, use your state of the commute that COG does. Use even your strategic plan that, you guys invested in and hopefully is a really good playbook on how you're moving forward. This is kind of, these are kind of the resources we want to see to help back up these projects that you propose through Innovative TDM. Next slide. So we're wrapping up here. This is how we will score project assistance grants. Kathy did a really awesome job at highlighting some of those really critical categories. So I won't go over that, but I will say that the difference here and the change from last year, again, is that prior results category where you can see that it's a pretty big part of the scoring. In this case, for project assistance, it's going to really apply more to those first 3 grants, the employer trip reduction, the Vanpool, and the transit marketing. Now, if you're coming in obviously for the first time for, let's say, transit marketing, you don't have prior results, then obviously it's not going to result there. But most of our grantees are coming in for repeat grants. And so keep in mind that the prior results are really critical. And so everything you do should be about getting those results and always trying to up the results from the year before. So when we do score these out, the innovative TDM will stop at 100 because typically we're not going to have prior results to base that project off of. Everything else, you can see jumps up to 125, and that's really because of that prior results element and category that we have added. So, or have upped, really. One thing I have never, I don't think we have suggested is would be a good exercise for all of you who are applying for these grants to go through and do your own scoring and share that with us. I would love to see what you guys think, especially prior to submitting. So maybe even pick somebody that you trust that could kind of go through and score your grant as well based off these categories. I think that'd be great. So just a suggestion, let me know if you do that. I would love to have some back and forth with you on that, but something I wanted to throw out there. Okay, next slide. I feel like I went through that really quick. Chris, I haven't been looking at the questions, but fire away if you have anything you want some clarification on or suggestions, something giving you heartburn.
I will just say, as a comment for everyone, Alexandria did do the CAP project a few years back, and that's my background, actually showcasing when we worked with our local transit provider and the team I work with. I'm not the transit provider, but we got this bus wrap to talk about the free to ride, and that Alexandria buses are fare free.
Yeah,
the fare free part was not paid through the grant, but the marketing totally was.
yeah,
we're getting the word out still. So thank you.
yeah, Josh, and that's why I kind of called you guys out, because the coordination you all have between Dash and the commuter system. Dash, for everyone that in case you don't know, is City of Alexandria's bus service. It was great. It was really good. I thought the grant really was a hit. So yeah, thanks for calling that out, Josh.
I'm not seeing any questions or chat messages that haven't been addressed, so
Okay,
we can
let's
keep going.
move on. So this is the final stretch here. Last few things I'll talk about, and we'll finish up. Next slide, Miriam. So I'm not going to go through this bullet by bullet. I think this would be great for when you guys do get this copy of the presentation. You can go through it. A few things though, I'll highlight. You know, Kathy said this, and I think it's worth repeating. Make sure your budgets are thorough. Make sure your budgets, especially like when you start going through your line items, make sure the expenses that make up each budget category, and there's nothing left to the imagination. Include everything. You know, one example I'll give is if like you have supplies and materials, and then in your budget description you put pens and toner, and the amount for that is $1,000. There's a gap there. Pens and toners shouldn't cost it. So don't leave it up to us to kind of have to make that call on what we do with that situation. I don't even know what I'd do with that situation, but just make sure you flesh out each budget category. Make sure, again, have somebody else look at it. Say, does it make sense? Like what I have for this, for advertising and promotion, is the amount and what I put here, you know, so make sure that's the case. It's just something we see year in and year out. I wouldn't be repeating this again if it's not something we don't see consistently. So make sure your budgets and the expenses are totally filled out. And there's no, there going to be no question on, yeah, this is why we want this much money for this budget category. Your milestones, make sure everything that in the application funnels into the milestones, especially from the scope, especially from the budget and the marketing section. It's one thing that we do see from time to time is a lot of great stuff mentioned in the budget, and it's not translated to the milestones, or vice versa. There'll be something in the scope and it's called out specifically, but it's not in the budget. So make sure everything is aligned, make sure everything connects together, but again, everything should lead into that milestone. One little tip, milestone should be like a very specific point in time. So if you're gonna write a milestone that has like a whole year's worth time frame, July 1st through June 30th, and that's not a milestone. That should just go in your scope. So don't put that in your milestone. I'm always, and so is Kathy, if you know, if we're throwing a curveball here with that, just let us know. We can work that out. And SVRC, I'll call you guys out. We've been working on their milestones, and they got to a really good place too, where they really defined what they're doing, but then also broke down certain things into steps. Alexandria and Josh, you guys did the same thing. In fact, you all were the first ones to do that. So if you have a project, it's great for all of us. Break that project down, like the planning of the project, the execution of the project, evaluation, so potentially one thing could have 3 milestones. So just some guidance there. Yeah.
Gabe, there is a question for you about employer trip reduction. So
Okay.
Judy was asking if the VDOT activities and DRPT grant activities be separated and distinct in the application itself.
Well, I don't think we are requiring that, and we do realize there could be some overlap there. I would say
I'm going to jump in, Gabe, because I think what she's saying is, so we do ask in the application that you show the VDOT amount that you anticipate to get, and you show all the anticipated expenses you want to charge to VDOT. So the DRPT application has a way to separate that out. So you show that what you're doing the VDOT, and then you're showing what you want to charge to the DRPT grant. So it's not all one budget. It is separated in the application so that we can see the separation. But to Gabe's point, we do know that there might be, hey, I charge part of my time to do employer trip reduction work to both grants, and you separate that out. But that's okay. You can show that in the DRPT project assistance application of what functions and what work you're doing that you're charging to our grant. And then in the application, there's a section to show what you'd be charging the VDOT's grant. So I hope that makes sense. So, Gabe's not wrong when he said we understand it's one program, but we do want you to try to separate the cost. And we talked to VDOT about this too, so that they have same questions for us. Well, what are they charging to you? Not that we're, but accidentally, we just want to make sure there's no double counting or double charging. And we also want to make sure that we are charging both VDOT and DRPT are both, on the same page when it comes to, someone's employer outreach program. Okay, Judy had a follow-up. Many words about task project. So Judy, yeah, I think if you can, to the best of your abilities, try to show in the application what distinction you're going to be charging to DRPT versus VDOT. But I think to Gabe's point, if you're saying, hey, I'm going to work with employers to sell them to start up, commuter benefits programs, and you're going to charge that time both to DRPT and VDOT, that's okay. Just show that. So it doesn't have to be, oh, you can only do that task for DRPT or only that task for VDOT. You can split that task out, but it does get shown in the application. Okay. Someone has their hand up.
Yeah, I'll take a quick question for you regarding the focus on results. We've been talking a lot about a lot of different types of means of transportation. One of the things we talked about is biking, increasing bike commuting, right? In terms of some of the things we've talked about. I'm assuming that increase in transit ridership could also include increase in bike share participation, that type of thing. It's just not listed in the results. I wanted to see if that tied in with anything we could report out.
And it's funny when I was thinking about or making comments about what sometimes grants don't neatly fit in. I was thinking about the current grant you guys have because you do span across different. And I know there was a lot of discussion. Where's this fall? Does this fall under the other? Does this fall under transit marketing? I would say if you are coming in for a transit marketing grant, biking, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean we do want to focus on ridership through transit. Bus transit. I mean, I know technically Cabby is transit, so is Vanpool. I do get that. So that's why, I mean, I think in that instance, if increasing biking and especially bike commuting is going to be a main component of a grant, that's where we maybe have a discussion about, okay, what's the best place for this grant to go or for this particular project. But we certainly don't want to discount that, and we certainly would, encourage, projects of that nature. It's just where it goes. That's all.
Yeah, exactly, Gabe. So I think if you're only do a bike commuting project, that's your focus. We just want to get more people to bike to work. I think that is an innovative TDM application. But if you're doing bike or something else in conjunction with getting more people, getting to transit, or like a first mile, last mile for transit. So you're actually trying to promote or increase transit ridership by making it easier for people to make those connections on the front and back end. Then to Gabe's point, it is a transit marketing grant that could include promotion of bike share.
Cool.
As a last mile type of thing.
Great.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, Marcus.
Hi, Nan. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah. Can hear
Okay.
You.
So I just had two quick, I guess, partial questions, partial comments. So the first one kind of following up on Judy's question, because I was thinking about that as well. And you guys let me know, I guess, if you guys are in agreement or if it makes sense. I guess considering situations where a jurisdiction may have funding from both VDOT for outreach as well as, the employer trip reduction from you. Essentially, those projects are essentially the same. The duties are the same. The activities are the same. So, I mean, we've kind of handled it in different ways and trying to navigate that. And one would have been where we just essentially separate the reporting and what goes to where. So, if you look at it over a month time frame, you have a certain amount of meetings in that month. So you allocate for the reporting. I went to 10 meetings for this project and 10 meetings for that project, and that was the kind of way to separate it. Or is it just a situation where we're just kind of breaking down the programs, because the programs are, within the jurisdiction aren't going to change. So, a specific transit benefit promotion or a specific, guarantee ride home, all those programs are always going to be, consistently in play. So it's just a matter of using each project to kind of get a certain amount of funding to cover the activities. Is that kind of how you guys see it as well? Or, because I mean, I've kind of taken it to be that case. I just want to make sure that you guys are looking at it the same way. I'm assuming that's kind of what Judy was asking based on how I interpreted her question.
Yeah, Marcus, I know there's kind of a gray area that with the funding, because they really are two sources of funding for just about the same thing. And I think every program kind of does this differently. So yeah, I mean, it's going to really depend how you all fashion our grants, and then kind of what we can better make a call, or at least have more insight when we do see what you're doing for EDOT as well. So so that's why we ask that. And a lot of the times they'll be, hey, let's discuss this. Let's kind of iron out what's what. I mean, and then in terms of the back end, when it comes to reimbursements and when it comes to, we've tried different things throughout the years. So we're always trying to figure out the best way to kind of reconcile the two.
Right. And the reason why I ask is because I know a while back, I remember you all were saying, ideally, you just wanted to see what your funds were paying for versus what theirs are. And I just wanted to, kind of clarify that in the situation, obviously, if we're getting funding from both agencies, that we're not being penalized as far as our application, with the understanding that we're doing similar activities, and we are making the attempt to separate the two. Obviously, there can be a lot done on both on both projects, but just making sure that we're clear. Yeah, we're clearly defining the differences of how many meetings and how many engagements were done on one versus the other, even though we're promoting the same exact activities. So I just
Marcus, and you hit on you hit on like the main thing there, which is it's simple, but it's like the most critical part is, like, at the end of the day, we want to know what our money's getting us, just to put it really simply. So to how we get to that point and we can work together to that, that's really the main goal. And I'm sure I speak for Heidi and Hannah too. That's, they want to also see that. So it's not necessarily easy because, again, these funds are so similar. So, but that's the key, like, always keep that in mind, and for everybody else, and that really applies for every, every funding opportunity we talked about. That's kind of the end game. It's like, we want to know, hey, this was a good investment for the state. And then, on paper it looks good, but then at the end of the day, we also have to know it was good. And you're right. That's kind of like where we have to end up.
Right. And then my second comment was is more of, at least from my mindset, is more of a personal thing for us. Just some of the things that we've been trying to navigate in Fairfax when it comes to questions that I've had, with you all. And even looking at the slide on screen where it talks about the low administration costs, I'm still kind of trying to navigate the understanding of there's a clear breakdown when it comes to some of the project objectives and what each of the projects are for. And then there's a breakdown of what the scoring may be for each of those categories, whether it be budget related, and so on of the list of things that you guys had there. But I still feel like there's something I'm trying to navigate and get a better understanding of is like outside of the engagement with the employers and the meetings and the follow-ups and all those things, like what is like how is the stuff that's done behind the scene that is managing these projects weighed when it comes to the staff and like making sure that the budget is drawn down, making sure that the invoices are paid, making sure that the marketing concepts are created in process and preparation for each fiscal year. Like I'm still trying to get a feel for, is there a scoring mechanism to that, or is that just a matter of just kind of creating your scope of work? And because I mean, obviously there's a lot of time that goes into the reporting. There's a lot of time that goes into the reimbursement process.
I know exactly what you're getting at. And I go back to what Josh said and kind of Chris's response on how, or I'm sorry, Ben, you brought it up, with the vein pool and like, well, how is it technically, how do you come to that decision? And it is kind of like, when you see it type of thing, like, I'm not going to say there is a formula we use, but, let's say if you have $100,000 grant and you're asking for $50,000 to write applications and to do claims, well, we kind of know that's a lot. Like, should that be half your grant? So, but again, it depends for each application. It depends how, because if, one program might have higher administrative costs because they have 5 staff and they have a really big grant. And so, yeah, it is one of those, like I said, that we can't really like pinpoint it to like, we have this number that we have but yeah, we kind of, we do want the really like the focus of the grants to be the focus of the grants. And so we do know that there's stuff that has to go into it on the back end with the administrative costs. We just want to, we just want to make sure that, that's not going to be nearly an emphasis of the grant. Like, we know that that's kind of supplementary and it's supportive, and it's not really the main goal of the grant. So, kind of like no different if you were to hire a contractor and they had a really large amount for meetings, you'd be like, well, I hired you to do more than just meetings.
Right.
So, what that exactly is, like I said, we don't really have an exact amount, and we kind of just evaluate it application by application.
Okay. All right. And then promise one last question. I was kind of, I got caught in a phone call at the very beginning when Catherine was speaking, and I think it was in regards to the situation where we were talking about the use of the connecting VA and the situation with some of the regional things. I know that doesn't seem to apply when it comes to the ride matching. So was that more so just about the marketing and using that connecting VA as a tool for that versus the current ones in the Northern Virginia region? Or is that kind of similar to how we use because I mean the COG ride share database is what you guys use to kind of measure in the Northern.
No, Marcus, specifically it was for challenges.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you're going to go the route and you're going to have a fully fleshed out challenge where we're going to see a pretty good amount of money dumped into it and a lot of time, and there's going to be, we would prefer that the connecting VA app is used.
Okay.
For all the reasons Chris said, it's already vetted. We're already paying into it.
Gotcha.
So So it'd be very specific to challenges and things of that nature.
Okay, my apologies. I was trying to listen.
No, that's fine. No, it's good to. I know we definitely have to have conversations about that.
All right, appreciate it.
Marcus, I want to thank you because you were the one that had the challenge with an employer up there, and we tested it with connecting VA, and we wanted a mechanism. We go, okay, well, if Marcus or anyone else wants to do these types of things,
it works.
Hey, we should give them some guidance on that. So
yeah, absolutely.
There you go. So thank you.
No problem at all.
So Chris, I don't know if we're done with questions. I wanted to add one last kind of nugget here to guidance, or at least, in terms of our applications, that, make sure that once you do your application and it's ready to go, make sure it's ready to go. Because after February 1st, we really cannot have a lot of back and forth, if any. It's just not fair. And really, it's not an equitable thing to do that somebody almost can get like an extension on that if they keep coming back and forth. And so make sure everything is thorough, comprehensive. You're not, again, not leaving anything up to interpretation. Make sure everything's spelled out. Because there really won't be opportunity for us to come back and say, hey, what did you mean by that? No, it is what it is, and we're again don't kind of leave it into our hands to make calls on the application and make calls on a budget, specifically on a budget. If an egregious like oversight's done, like you forgot to add a 0 to 1,000 and it's 100, we can obviously we can work with you on something like that. But where something's not justified, where something's not clear, that again, make sure that's all taken care of before February 1st and you submit the grant. And also leave you with this: if you see any kind of change in your grants, especially for our returning grantees, and especially with the increase in budget, I would say one, let us know now, soon. And two, do not, if you don't let us know, even if you do let us know, like make sure it's reflected very clearly in your applications what that increase was for. Find opportunities throughout the grant to do that. You can even do it in the budget. You can do it somewhere in the scope, but make sure any changes, especially in budgets, are reflected and very clear and upfront and center. All right, next slide, Miriam. So here's some key dates. I won't go over all of these. Again, they'll be available to you once we send this out. But it's always good to have, the big ones, obviously, December 1st. That's when things gets rolling. And February 1st, that's your last day to submit your application. Next slide. Here's your blue book, especially for folks that are new on here, which I do hope we have a lot of new potential grantees on here. Make sure your blue book the blue book is really close to you as you go out throughout this process, especially as you start deciding what grants to use. It has everything you need to know in terms of what the grant is for, what you can use your money on, what you'll get claimed, what you'll get reimbursements for, what you won't. So make sure you always look at this. And even for our returning grantees, it's good to just kind of peruse through it, look through it. There's changes, things you should always kind of be right in the forefront. For a lot of us, it's been a year since we looked at this thing. So so it's always good to review. Next slide. Few more resources for you. Again, I mentioned the blue book. This is a critical time. So I think I speak for Kathy too. We rather be bugged now and let us know what questions you have, any doubts you have, any suggestions you have. Let us know now during this cycle. And so that way, when your application is submitted, it is as good as it gets. And then here's a link you can click on once you get this PowerPoint, that you can again kind of look at the funding opportunities and some more information on our grants. Next slide. And here is our contact information. If you have any questions, like I mentioned, please make sure to reach out. Here's a cool little breakdown of the areas we cover. And do not hesitate to use this if you need to get a question answered, or like I said, you have a suggestion. Always open to that. And I think that's it.
Hey, Marcus got a question.
Yeah, my apologies. I just was thinking about Gabe's just recent comment about trying to make sure that we do any kind of coordination prior to February for the equity's sake. And I think I remember early on Kathy mentioning that DRPG has the right to reserve to make edits to the applications when it comes to certain criteria. I know whenever there's certain updates within web grants, it'll notify us, or we'll get some type of email saying like it's in reviewing stage, or whatever stage of that. Is there any mechanism in place to know that, let's say if there's something that changes, that you guys go back into the application itself and change? Is there any way to find out when those changes take place or what has been changed? Because if we submit our application with whatever criteria that we designate, and then let's say for whatever reason, let's say we put a budget amount for a line item at 10,000, you guys change it to 5, or something like that. Is there any way for us to be notified of that early on? Because I know specifically last year we had some changes that didn't pop up until after the applications came back from the board. So is there anything in the system that we can get some type of additional notification so that we can go back and see what those changes were, or is it just kind of, nothing that can be done with that particular thing? I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but I know we ran into that in past cycles.
Not that I know of, Marcus, in terms of like, if let's say we go in and make a change to the budget or something, like the one thing I will say is, and I know this is probably not the best thing, and maybe something we could look into, but you'll always see the most current version of the component of the application. And a lot of times we create a new component almost every time. Anytime there's a change made, a new component will be made. A copy will be made with that change. Besides kind of like checking periodically on that, I think our February meetings that we have are really critical to check. But we'll still be right in the middle of like changes. But I think also that's a good suggestion that if we do have changes, maybe we can let you all know, at least give you heads up. But we can't really also discuss a lot of this until things are kind of like finalized. And we will for sure have meetings as we have in the past. I think most of y'all have done this. Like we will have meetings to discuss any changes made. Chris, I'm sorry, what's the trigger for that when we do have our meetings? It always escapes me that when we do discuss changes.
Yeah. So first, I would say we don't like cutting things. That's not what we're here for, but we are certainly stewards of public dollars. So I think having these conversations starting now to before you hit submit on that application is talking with us, talking to Gabe, Kathy, me about your application, about what's good, what isn't good, questions. There's a lot of, things that aren't like definitive questions until we actually, see what you're trying to do or want to put in there. So I think that's the best way to avoid changes on our end when we are doing our application review. So that way we're all on the same page. But yeah, sometimes there are things, we don't have an unlimited budget for our CAP grant funding opportunity. And it's a competitive grant, not only with all of the CAP applications, but it's part of the special programs budget, which includes all those merit things that Kathy went through. And also demonstration grants for new transit service. So those are all competing. So there might be some times where we just don't have enough money to fund everyone. And we do have to make some cuts. So, but I do think there is a thing in web grants that you might be able to go back in and see the changes before things are finalized. So I think, but don't hold me to that. I think web grants, you won't get an alert, but I think you can see if we change something in your application. I think you can see that in web grants before we do our final awards. So I think that's one way to do it. And then, I think to Gabe, to your question, so we can't really fully discuss our recommendations until the draft of our 6-year improvement programs goes to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, because we don't want to circumvent them seeing it and them being able to comment on it. So that usually happens if that slide, we went through it a little bit quick with all the key dates. So there's a key date in April where DRPD, at the CTB meeting in April, DRPD presents the draft 6-year improvement program, which is basically all of our recommendations for projects awarded. Those of you not familiar what CTB is, the Commonwealth Transportation Board, they are the organization or agency or entity, I should say, in Virginia that basically decides final what gets funded. They do that for DRPT, they do that for VDOT also in all their projects. So we make recommendations, we put together a 6-year improvement program, our director gets up there, talks about it. And so April's the draft, and then there's public comment period. There are some public meetings about it, so the public can also comment on it. And then at the June meeting of the CTB, they vote they finalize it. So then that's where all the recommendations. So not until that draft goes out can we really have some hard conversations with you. But after that draft goes out, we do want to talk to you about, hey, this is what we saw, this is what we changed, here's why we changed it, if we have changes.
So, Chris, I guess
Yeah.
and Marcus, to answer Marcus's question, and really this is for everybody, like you really won't know about any changes until that April draft goes out. So that's
Yeah,
we can't really
Yeah,
discuss any changes we made prior to that,
Right.
Marcus. So I mean that's why it's so critical. Like you don't want to go through literally 3 months until you find out what those changes are. So
Kathy and Gabe are available to take a look at things before you click submit.
well, I was gonna say
So,
that, and
yeah.
again, similar to like how I've referenced scoring yourself. Like here's and I don't want to speak to Kathy, but I think Kathy, you would welcome this. Like, put your budget in an Excel spreadsheet and send it to us prior, or send it to me. I would love to look at it like in that format. Do your scope of work and send it in an email or whatever it is. Your milestones. We do really want to see them. So break them out and put them in a spreadsheet and send them over. More than willing to look at that. Just don't put that in the application, please. Don't attach anything that's going to be in the app already in the app. So I don't want to open the door to that. But beforehand, go ahead and send that stuff.
We can even see your draft application. So before you click submit,
that's a good point.
we can actually see all that anyway. So
yeah.
Well,
so yeah, if you do it and it's in web grants, say, hey Gabe, can you take a look? It's in there. Or Kathy. Yeah, sorry, that's a good point, Chris. Yeah.
Saves a step.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Kendall's patiently waiting. She has her hand up.
No worries. It's kind of a follow-up to kind of what Marcus was alluding to and changes and whatnot. If we do obviously change our budget for a project, I know internally in Loudon, then that project has to get approved by the board and updated at the beginning of the fiscal year. Is there an opportunity from DRPT that after the CTB votes on the grants that we receive like an award letter, if you will, or something just high level saying, Loudoun County will be receiving these projects or whatever funding amount, rather than, I know you guys have a lot to handle with web grants and things like that and get everything set up. I'm just trying to think of a way to be a little proactive if we can to get our grants kicked off as fast as possible at the fiscal year. Because our board goes on recess in August. So if we miss that like second July board meeting, we can't do anything until September. So just thinking ahead of that, if there is something that does need board approval.
Yeah, we don't do official letters to individual grant recipients about each grant. So what we do is we publish in April the draft 6-year improvement program will be published. So and that's open to the public, everyone. You can go on our website and you can go look for your grants and you can see the recommended award amount. And then certainly when the CTB approves it, there's the final version. So that's what we rely on. We send out a notice that says, hey, it's there. But we don't do the actual letters because we would have a lot of those letters to send out. Right. But, I think, you can always reach out to Gabe or Kathy, depending on who your program manager is, and just say, if you're not sure, just say, hey, did the CTB approve that? But it's on our website. Like once that is finalized, that's, you got it. So, but that's late. That's usually late June. That's when the CTB approves things, late June.
Right. I was just thinking it because I mean and I'll work with Gladys and some of our accounting team and see what we can put together. But I think we have had to have we'll take it offline. We can get board meeting tomorrow so we can chat more.
No, I notice a lot of you have to go through your boards and sometimes late June, you're now in July and you probably already set the board agenda. A lot of boards don't meet in August, so now you're in September. So it takes some time. Unfortunately, that's our timeline. I would say you could maybe use the draft one in April as your template because not a lot's going to change probably between that draft one and the final one for our cap stuff. So maybe you can kind of maybe would be helpful to you. But yeah, I understand the time constraints with boards and things like we're still, and then getting the contract signed. I think a lot of folks have to go through their boards, and sometimes, we issue the contract in middle of July and it's too late to get on the agenda. And now we're in September and even October to get on their agenda. So we understand that. It's just the timeline we deal with. It's all, we work backwards from the CTB meetings.
Understand. Okay, just thought I'd ask.
All right, and I don't see anything in the chat, and no one's hands are raised. I'll give it a few seconds if anyone has a last-minute question or comment. Just to reiterate, while you're thinking, reach out to us. I think, talking to us and having us kind of go through a dialogue or looking at some things is the best way to avoid, problems with the application. And, again, in our timeline, so you guys, submit February 1st, and we're reviewing. We've got to make our SIP draft, I think a couple weeks prior to the April meeting at CTB. So that doesn't give us a whole lot of time to do our review. So I think Kathy was making this point, trying to avoid a lot of back and forth. If you do, if you talk to us earlier on, we can avoid a lot of the back and forth after you submit, so that it helps things go a little more smoothly. And particularly if you've got some new idea for an innovative TDM project, we definitely want to talk about that now.
Oh, absolutely.
So we can get on the same page. So, all right, I don't see any other questions in the chat or hands raised. Hope you all found this very helpful. I know there's some changes and some tweaks. Just last bit of advice: concentrate on results, and I think you'll have a good application. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. Look for the link to the recording of this, which includes the slides, December 1st or thereabouts. And have a good rest of your day, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.